for joining us. Visitors crowded the Fort William Historical Park today to catch a glimpse of the Grand Rendezvous arrival reenactment. The event featured a canoe flotilla of over 10 canoes and 200 reenactors. The event also had a special guest, the Honorable Elizabeth Dowdeswell, Lieutenant Governor of Ontario. Jessica Clement was there.
Over 200 reenactors from across North America were brought together this week to recreate the annual summer gathering held at Fort William over 200 years ago. Saturday's activities featured the much-anticipated Grand Rendezvous arrival that had a canoe flotilla of over 10 canoes. Visitors were able to catch a glimpse of what Fort William would have looked like back in the 1800s and learn all about what the Great Rendezvous was. Reenactor Mitchell Seguin says their new motto, Bringing Life to History, is an important message for them.
Not only do we want to show and prove what life in 1815 would have been like, we pride ourselves on giving a very authentic, immersive, hands-on experience that you really can't get at a lot of other places. But at the same time, we want to teach, educate, enlighten people, doing what we can for truth and reconciliation, creating and preserving bonds. Very important.
The event had a number of dignitaries participate, who all spoke about the impact Fort William Historical Park has had over the past 50 years, including special guest Elizabeth Dowdeswell, the Lieutenant Governor of Ontario. She said the story of the fort is an important one to tell.
It's a story of identity, a story of resilience, a story about the great things we can do when we work together. Most importantly, it's a story that is emblematic of the great Northern Ontario spirit. This place has always been significant to the history of Ontario as a province, and indeed Canada, as it bridged the East and the West.
General Manager Patrick Morash says thousands of people have come out to the fort over the past week, and adds that it's been exciting being able to host the Great Rendezvous celebration again after 12 years.
The place is full of life. There are reenactors throughout the park. There are people who have been here multiple times. There are people who have never been here before. There are lots and lots of kids running around and playing and doing all sorts of fun things. It's just really, really encouraging to see the response.
If you missed the fun on Saturday, don't worry. Sunday is the final day of the Great Rendezvous celebration. It will feature more activities, demonstrations, and presentations. Jessica Clement, TBT News.
The Transportation Museum invited residents to come out to their headquarters at Pool 6 today to celebrate the Canadian Coast Guard and the city's maritime history. The day started off with a parade of the Royal Canadian Navy Color Party and the Thunder Bay Pipes and Drums, before going into speeches that included the recognition and commemoration of the contributions and role of the Canadian Coast Guard. The event also included a joint celebration of the 100th anniversary of the Royal Canadian Naval Reserves and a visit by the CCGS Samuel Risley and other patrol crafts. The rest of the day featured free tours, displays, and a special dockside market with local vendors. Museum Vice Chair Robert Kilgour says the event highlights the importance of the community's relationship with the Canadian Coast Guard.
As a community that has been based around the water, is truly in the truest sense a maritime community, we are dependent on organizations and services to make it possible for us to do business, to bring people to the community. For many years, there were no roads or highways, and water was it. And I think the connection that we have with the Canadian Coast Guard and the services they provide are profound.
I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled to showcase the people that work for me that are here on these vessels, because they truly are our everyday heroes. They're the ones that are going out. They sacrifice time away from their families in order to serve the Canadian public. So I'm thrilled that we can have this showcase for them and recognition for them, because oftentimes they're not recognized enough.
The OPP have charged one person with murder in connection with a death in the town of Marathon. Members of the Marathon OPP detachment responded to an incident before 1:30 this morning where they found 39-year-old Charity Bittern Moses with life-threatening injuries. The victim was transported to hospital and later pronounced deceased. As a result of the investigation, 20-year-old Dallas Malley of Marathon was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. Malley was remanded into custody and is scheduled to appear before the Ontario Court of Justice in Thunder Bay on July 20th. The investigation is still ongoing, with a post-mortem examination to be conducted at a later date in Toronto. Behind Racism, the newest exhibit at the Thunder Bay Museum, is asking visitors to challenge their own assumptions as they learn about the science behind racism and how bias works in the human mind. The exhibit includes interactive displays suitable for young and old alike. Museum goers can test their own implicit biases and get the facts about racism and its impacts in Canada. The touring exhibit was developed by the Ontario Science Centre, and CEO Paul Curtenard hopes to move the needle on racism across the country.
Like there's an exhibit right here next to us that asks us to think about, do we recognize people as being part of our team? Do we recognize them as being part of another team? And how then do I choose who I'm engaging with, or how I'm going to move forward, who I give preferential treatment to? And those are all unconscious things we take on because we're making split-second decisions.
There's been a lot of conversations in town about racism, about bias, and a lot of things going around about our police service, our government, organizations in town, incidents and crimes being committed based on these premises. And so we've thought, what better way to do something about that, to not be a neutral institution and to take action than to bring an exhibit in that addresses how people deal with their bias.
Museum Executive Director Scott Bradley says understanding the science of how people think is an important way of viewing history. He hopes that people who are open-minded and have a willingness to look at themselves will come to the exhibit and find the tools to become better people. A controversy is stirring at Patricia Gardens facility in Dryden, where residents are expressing concern over what they say is a lack of transparency concerning the state of empty units in the building. Patricia Gardens, an assisted living complex for seniors, does not have a published wait list for a room, but if Princess Court is any measure, that's the long-term care facility next door, it could be a long wait. That scarcity for rooms and what's being called a lack of transparency is what has community members expressing confusion about the 10 or so units that have been vacant for months. Foot care nurse and RN Susan Paquette has been ringing the alarm out of concern for her clients who live there.
When it's a big secret, people start jumping to conclusions and filling in their own blanks, and they're thinking, what actually is going on? The one resident kind of made a joke. She said to me, I wonder where we'll go if we get kicked out. I don't think that's going to happen at all, but that means that if they haven't got answers, they're fearful.
After a request for comment, the chair for Dryden District Senior Services, Martin McKinnon, provided a statement explaining that negotiations involving multiple organizations are underway, and until that process is complete, no vacant spaces can be filled. He also promises to share more details as they become available. 4 students have completed the Ascend Accelerator program at Lakehead University. It's a 10-week business boot camp that sees aspiring business owners provided with funding and mentorship.
Codes that are going to be placed on these lockers, and it'll take them directly to their website.
The Ascend program's 3rd cohort celebrated the completion of the program, which included weekly workshops, valuable mentorships, and access to FedNor funding. Participants presented their businesses this past week in Lakehead's business incubator, the Ingenuity Space, which hosted this year's program.
It's been a journey, a really helpful journey. I've learned so much that I can probably apply to my other businesses. It's always scary to make that first entrepreneurial jump. I wasn't sure what to do. I didn't know where to start. I knew how to do the art, but knowing the art and knowing the business, 2 different things.
Whereas I get to give them the business information, I learn about the industry through them. So, I don't know anything about nails myself, but she comes in, I get to learn some things, and then I get to help her learn the business half of it, and the same with the others.
Well, this is my actually my 2nd year applying for the program. I initially applied in the beginning with another business, was unsuccessful in that one, and then I, again through trying to, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, right? So trying to, find a viable way to bring, what's in my mind out into the world, right? I created the locker system.
As we test markets, sometimes we have to turn around and say, what we thought was going to actually happen isn't going to happen.
The 10-week program is free to businesses founded by Lakehead University students or alumni who have graduated in the past year. We're now joined by sports